Have you ever wondered if the Mac Mini is really worth it? Every penny you're going to invest. Stay tuned, because today we're going to clear up all those doubts. Welcome to this ultimate guide for buying a Mac Mini and not wasting your money. Discover the best Mac Mini configurations, which upgrades are worth it, and how to optimize your budget. Apple prices are high, so avoid overspending on unnecessary specs. This is your guide to smart spending. We already know that Apple's prices can be quite high. So if you don't want to fall into the trap of overspending on specs you'll never need, this is the right place. Configurations of the M4 Mac Mini. The Mac Mini family, based on the M4 chip. It offers several factory configurations that Apple showcases on its website, but it's important to understand the differences between them and how they fit your type of use. Specifically, we can find 3 versions with the standard M4 chip and a 4th one that comes with the M4 Pro. Let's quickly go over them so you understand the options. Mac Mini M4, 16GB, 256GB SSD. This is the most basic version and also the most affordable. It comes with 16GB of unified memory, which is more than enough for many users. It includes a 256GB SSD, which might be a bit limited if you're working with very large files, but for regular home or office use, it's usually enough. Mac Mini M4, 16GB, 512GB SSD. Has 512GB storage and 16GB memory. Ideal for more space, heavy apps, or storing photos, music, documents. Local photo, music and document libraries. Mac Mini M4, 24GB, 512GB SSD, in addition to 512GB of storage. Here, we bump the memory up to 24GB. For those who are going to use photo and video editing applications occasionally, or 3D modeling and development programs, this could be the perfect combination. Mac Mini M4 Pro, 24GB, 512GB SSD. M4 Pro chip boosts CPU/GPU, 24GB. In addition to starting with 24GB of unified memory and 512GB of SSD. One of the advantages of this model is that it offers you Thunderbolt 5 ports, unlike the Thunderbolt 4 of the other versions. If you need an extra boost in graphics performance, or you are going to connect peripherals that require greater bandwidth, this may be your ally. Having the option of a Pro chip in the Mac Mini can sound very tempting for content creators, design professionals, or even casual gamers who want smoother performance. Cost is high, memory upgradable, 32GB in M4, especially if we consider that we can still scale memory up to 32GB on the base M4, without necessarily having to jump to the M4 Pro. Still, if you're someone who constantly produces 4K video, juggles a ton of audio tracks, or works with large files from Photoshop or Illustrator, the jump to the M4 Pro can save you valuable minutes and even hours in rendering and editing, so it could be a reasonable investment. Base models are cost-effective for general browse, write documents, consume multimedia content, and even play light games. You probably won't need that much CPU or GPU power, and the base models might be more cost-effective for you. One last detail, in the M4 Pro model, the connection upgrades to Thunderbolt 5, which will allow you to use ultra-fast external storage drives or 8K monitors. For some, it might be unnecessary. For others, it can be a big game changer if your workflow involves heavy data handling. Whether you're a professional or just a user looking for the best experience, the key is to analyze if you'll really use that extra power and if it justifies the investment. How much memory do you really need? One of the critical points when buying a Mac Mini is deciding how much unified memory to get. Unlike traditional PCs, in the Mac line, with Apple Silicon, you can't upgrade the RAM later on. So what you buy today will be what you have forever. That's why it's important to make a smart choice. But we also don't want to waste money by bumping the memory up to astronomical levels that we'll never actually use. The base model of the M4 Mac Mini comes with 16GB of memory, and the truth is, for most everyday uses like web browsing, email, document editing, and consuming content, that's more than enough. In fact, I've used the Mac Mini M4 with 16GB for tasks that include light video editing, small projects and design apps, and even virtual machines. When should you upgrade to 24GB for photo or video editing? If you use Adobe Creative Cloud, Final Cut Pro, or develop software with multiple projects, the extra 8GB is useful. Editing large files or multiple tracks can quickly use memory. What about the 32GB in the base M4? Editing projects can eat up memory surprisingly fast, especially if you're working with large files or multiple audio and video tracks. And what about the 32GB in the base M4? This is already terrible for power users, those who do 4K video editing with lots of effects, work with multiple virtual machines, or drive huge databases could benefit from those 32GB. If you're considering more than 32GB, consider upgrading to M4 Pro for more memory. Note the price increase. That's when you might consider jumping to the M4 Pro version, which allows for even greater memory configurations. Price jump increases. Price jump is justified. The important thing is to be realistic about your needs. Many users get caught up in the idea of needing more memory. It's better, and they end up paying sky-high prices for something they won't even use. Keep in mind that Apple charges a hefty markup for these upgrades. For office automation and basic multimedia, Apple is top-notch. In Imovio Final Cut, 16 to 24 GB is enough for light files. 4K editing requires 32 plus GB. Be honest about your workflow and budget. 24 GB is suitable for non-demanding users. Heavy users will recognize their needs. If you're not a professional user, 24 GB of memory is sufficient. Storage is where you should invest your money. And if you're really going to squeeze every megabyte out of that memory, you'll know it ahead of time because it's part of your daily work routine. Storage, where you should invest your money. Let's move on to the next big dilemma, internal storage. This is where many users can save a good chunk of change if they know how to play their cards right. Apple offers, in the Mac Mini M4, configurations ranging from 256 GB of SSD up to 2 TB, and in the M4 Pro version, you can go even higher. But keep in mind that Apple's storage upgrades tend to be much more expensive compared to buying external drives. For most people, 256 GB may be enough. As long as you have pretty moderate usage or are willing to manage your data in the cloud or on external drives. If you download a lot of heavy apps or your photo library exceeds 100 GB, which is very common these days, you may run into limitations. Once you add up the space taken by macOS, system files, your apps, and what you store in iCloud, you'll see that 256 GB can fill up faster than you expected. The 512 GB option offers space for photos, videos, and apps suitable for light editing. It will give you extra headroom to store photos, videos, and apps without worrying too much in the short term. Also, if your workflow includes light video or photo editing, it's a good cushion before you have to turn to external solutions. However, if you really need more than 512 GB, you might want to consider an external SSD over an Apple upgrade. You might want to seriously consider buying a good external SSD instead of paying Apple for an internal upgrade. Why? Because you can often find external SSDs that are as fast as internal ones using Thunderbolt 4 or 5. Brands like Crucial, Samsung, or OWC offer 1 TB, 2 TB, or 4 TB options, at better prices. Now, what about speed and reliability? Don't worry, as long as you get a quality external drive and make sure to back up your data. Using Time Machine prevents issues. Ensure the OS has space for performance. Remember, for the OS, main apps, and essential files, keep some internal space for performance and convenience. Projects, image/music libraries, and files not used daily can be stored on an external SSD. Can live perfectly fine on an external SSD. Another key factor in the Mac Mini M4 Pro is the ability to upgrade the CPU and GPU. Apple gives you the option to pay more to add 2 extra CPU cores and 4 extra GPU cores. Is that extra expense worth it? To be honest, in most cases, the difference is minimal and doesn't justify the cost. I've been able to confirm this by comparing different Mac Mini M4 Pro models in video editing tasks. Sometimes, the model with more cores performs similarly or worse than the lower model. So, if you don't need maximum power and aren't a professional on big projects, you probably won't notice the difference. Where you might see a tangible improvement is in the 10 gigabit per second Ethernet connection. The base Mac Mini comes with a standard gigabit connection, which is enough for most homes or small offices. However, if you have a high-speed local network, given you're working with a powerful NAS server and hard drive setup in RAID that can reach high read speeds, //write, a 10 gigabit connection can be a real lifesaver. For example, in a professional collaborative video editing environment, uploading and downloading huge files from a 10 gigabit network is much more efficient. But again, if you don't plan to use it at that level, it's an extra expense you could save. To better illustrate these decisions, let me tell you about the 3 Mac Minis you could buy in different contexts. Base Mac Mini M4 for home use, with 16 GB of memory, and 256 GB of SSD, used for everyday tasks. Some navigation, video trimming, even managing a Plex server and Home Assistant, all in a very compact device that connects to a Samsung M8 monitor. Here, 256 GB is enough, complemented by 1 or 2 external SSDs for larger media libraries. A cloud backup system ensures that if one of those external drives fails, the data can be recovered without any issues. Mac Mini M4 Pro, basic version. For work and light editing, with 24 GB of memory, 512 GB of SSD, and 10 GB of Ethernet, because in the studio we have some with that connection. This machine is used for office tasks, video calls, and moderate video editing in the end stages. It's connected to a big monitor, a dock with extra ports for SD cards, peripherals, and a good microphone for recording. Its performance is more than enough for advanced productivity tasks. Mac Mini M4 Pro. More cores, more memory, for intense editing. Configured with 48 gigabytes of memory, 1 terabyte of SSD, and 10 gigabytes of Ethernet. It was supposed to be the beast for video editing. Forte. And yes, it performs wonderfully. But after various tests, we found that there isn't a huge difference compared to the basic Pro version. The larger memory is good for very large projects, but not for typical editing tasks. The gain is marginal. Connected to a 4K monitor and a Thunderbolt dock, everything runs smoothly. But the extra investment might not be justified for everyone.